is a bad disease, especially in the medical fields, because there is no cure for cerebral palsy. How do I know that my child or my baby has cerebral palsy? Cerebral palsy presents with motor dysfunction. The child is crippled. The child is unable to walk. The child is unable to talk. He is not able to meet the milestones of growth as is normal. And those are just things that we see early. In as much as the damage occurs during childbirth, the signs and symptoms of cerebral palsy keep coming as the central nervous system keeps maturing, as the baby keeps growing. We start to see more and more and more manifestations of the injuries that had occurred to the brain. Some of these include crippleness, as we have mentioned. Some include other diseases coming in. For example, epilepsy and seizure diseases. We see children with impaired intelligence. We see children who are not able to control their bowel, for example, or they are not having bladder control. We see children who have frequent infection, meningitis. They have respiratory infections, pneumonias all the time. They have abdominal or tummy infections all the time. So such a child needs to be seeing a doctor all the time. All the time. Not that because the doctor is going to do anything about the cerebral palsy, but as a result of the cerebral palsy, the child is predisposed to so many other infections and conditions. We have several types of cerebral palsy. There are three major categories. One is spastic, which comprises the largest percentage. There is what we call dyskinetic, and we also have a type of cerebral palsy which is called ataxic. Cerebral palsy is bad as it is, regardless of what class of cerebral palsy you have. We have the severest form, which is the spastic type, and the spastic type is also classified into smaller details. This is important for us to know. One of the worst types is the quadriplegic spastic type. This means that all the limbs of the child are affected. There is no limb that is spared. And that can, in a layman's language, mean that the damage to the brain is so gross, meaning that the damage has crossed half of the brain. So this damage occurs to many parts of the brain. Initially, it is manifested as motor or movement functions. The child is not able to stand when they should stand. The child is not able to walk or to sit or to hold up their neck when they should. Those are the initial signs. But now, as the child progresses, we have said there are many other manifestations that keep coming. And the children with this kind of quadriplegic spastic type are classified as the worst form of cerebral palsy. They are worse because in as much as there are little interventions here and there that can be done for the other classes of cerebral palsy, there remains nothing to do for the quadriplegic spastic kind. Because in as much as their motor is affected, their intelligence is affected. Most of the time they are also mute, they are dumb, they can also be blind, their intelligence is grossly affected, and this kind of children require a lot of care. You need to take so much care of them. How they eat. If they are alone, they cannot do anything for themselves. They can the much that they can do is just to pull themselves on the ground, to try to drag themselves. But they are also weak. Remember that their muscles are affected, and even that kind of movement requires muscle action. So they get tired, they get infections, they get sick very frequently. So the long and short of it, as far as cerebral palsy is concerned, is that there is no treatment. There is no injection. There is no medication. there is no way that has been proved to work to reverse a case of cerebral palsy. Now, we have the case of this young child called Paul Kipchirchir Cheruyot. Paul comes from Baringo County in Kabarnet. Paul was born and diagnosed with cerebral palsy, the spastic quadriplegic type of cerebral palsy, which we have mentioned is the worst form of cerebral palsy. His four limbs are involved and he's trying to move himself. He's dragging himself. He can't even crawl. He cannot crawl. He uses his right hand to try to pull himself on the ground in order that he may gain some motion. So based on the severity of his presentation, Paul presents with the quadriplegic type of cerebral palsy, which, as we have seen, is the worst form of cerebral palsy. There is no treatment. As far as medical field is concerned, there is no treatment. The case of Paul Cheruyot, Paul is so hit, he is so hampered in such a way that there is nothing to rehabilitate. The reason I'm saying that is this. In order to rehabilitate the lower limbs, we will need the support of the upper limbs. If we wanted to give Paul braces, for example, or calipers to walk, we will also need that after we have given the calipers for the lower limbs, then we will need at least that the upper limbs are strong enough to hold crutches. But for the case of Paul, this is nowhere, because both the lower and the upper limbs are grossly affected. So there is no rehabilitation. The hands are so shriveled. In fact, I use the term, the entire child is shriveled up, such that he cannot even hold a cup for himself. He cannot hold a spoon to feed himself. He cannot do anything for himself. He requires somebody to be there for him for everything. If he has to go to use the bathroom, he needs support. If he has to feed, he needs support. If he has to turn on the bed, he needs support. He is so damaged by this injury such that we are able to see now that the legs, the lower limbs have been shriveled and folded into that position, and they have become permanent. They have developed contractures that if you lift him up, they are not flaccid anymore, but they have become rigid in that position. The upper limbs have become rigid in those positions. So the fate of this child is gross. It is so bad for him. There is damage that he had accrued over time. There were contractures that had formed on the back part of his knees. He could not even stretch his legs. You couldn't even do that to him. If you try to straighten his legs, he would weep and cry because of the contractures that had formed. So bad for him, because in as much as the outside we see this shriveling, whatever is inside, hidden from the eye, is bigger, is gross, beyond what medicine can try to help. The reason why we are seeing this posturing and this shriveling is because there is no communication. The posture that Paul is taking, the baby Paul is taking, that posture medically is called decerebrate. Decerebrate simply means lack of communication between the cerebrum or the brain and the spine. So the brain is essentially gone. It has been hit so bad that there is rarely no communication from that part of the affected side of the brain that reaches to the body. So the body resorts to drying up. We can just say that the appendages are just alive because of the blood supply that goes to it. But function is totally lost. There is no movement. There is no joint function. There is no any productive function that can come from those kind of limbs. That is why we classify this case of Paul Kipchirchir Cheruiyot as one of the worst cases of cerebral palsy. There is no help in the hospital setup, in the medical fraternity for such. It has never been discovered. I say there is no help for this reason, because in order that this child, Paul, is helped, then we will require a new brain. We will require what is called brain transplant, something that has never been attempted, it has never been achieved, it has not even been conceived or perceived in the medical field. It is a total impossibility. The brain is such a complex, very complex organ, because in as much as we have a lot of scientists, medical people, other scientists from different fields who have dedicated themselves in studying what the brain is, the general consensus is that whatever is known concerning the human brain today is less than 10%, if I'm going to be generous, less than 10% of what the brain, the human brain is. So you cannot even talk of brain transplant when science is defeated in understanding what the brain is, how the brain functions. So there is not anyone who understands the human brain entirely. Paul Kipchirchir holds an identification tag, which means that he has been put through scrutiny, through examination. He has been checked by several doctors, several social workers, several people, in order that he is proven and registered as a disabled person, that he may have that number and that tag. So now Paul Kipchirchir Cheruiyot is now standing, and he is using the same legs that had been written off by cerebral palsy. Paul Kipchirchir Cheruiyot is now able to maintain balance. He is able to walk. He is able to use the limbs that had been written off to hold a cup and deliver it. The brain that was written off, the brain that was damaged by cerebral palsy, the brain that was not communicating with the body, the brain that was useless, as I may say, is now out of nowhere. Of the new brain, there has been a repair that has occurred all over him to break off the contractions, to break off the damage that had been caused earlier on from the cerebral palsy. There is also coordination which was not there before. It has been restored. He is totally changed. There must have been a total brain transplant that has occurred to bring this change that we are now seeing in the life of Paul Kipchirchir Cheruiyot. There is no other explanation.
the Lord has spoken to me about a very important event. He has spoken with me about the meeting that is coming up to Eldoret. And I see there is this woman whose baby was crippled, born crippled, a crippled baby. And the baby is wearing, I think it's a sweater, it's whitish upper sweater. And in this particular case, the Lord has shown me this baby that was born totally crippled. And the baby is wearing a sweater, I think it's a sweater, the upper side, the whitish white sweater, I still see the baby. And then when the man of God comes into the stadium at the gate, as he enters, the historic power hits the meeting, and the baby gets up and begins to walk, and I see the mother running in shock, trying to follow the baby.
Utukufu wa Bwana
is visiting here
unatembelea hapa sasa hivi.
I am announcing to you
Ninawatangazieni
that this is the hour
ya kwamba hili ndio saa
when the glory of Jehovah
wakati ambapo utukufu wa Yehova
is visiting here.
unatembelea hapa.
The glory of my Father
Utukufu wa baba yangu
is right here.
uko papa hapa.
Anything and everything
Chochote na kila kitu
can happen and will happen.
kinaweza kutendeka na kitatendeka.
Worship team, inueni mikono.
Kikundi cha kuabudu, inueni mikono.
Look at what is about to happen to the worship.
Tazama kile ambacho kiko karibu kutendekea
Look at
kikundi cha
that.
kuabudu.
It has begun.
Imekwisha anza.
Look at that.
Tazama hiyo.
The glory now has been released.
Utukufu sasa umewachiliwa.
Is this the baby I was seeing?
Yeye mtoto nilikuwa naona katika ndoto
With straight legs.
akiwa na miguu ya aina hii.
You know, I get to see all of them.
Unajua ninawaona wote.
I get to see them in the dream.
Ninawaona wote katika ndoto.
Let the baby come.
Wacha mtoto akuje.
I think big miracles have happened
Na
here.
kile miujiza mikubwa imetendeka
Look
hapa.
at this leg.
Tazama hii miguu.
Can you come to me?
Je, unaweza kuja kwangu?
Man of God.
Nabii wa Mungu.
This is baby blessings.
Huyu ni mtoto Blessing.
She was crippled since birth.
Alikuwa kiwete tangia kuzaliwa.
Where are you, Bishop?
Uko wapi askofu?
Okay, thank you. Was crippled since birth.
Alikuwa kiwete tangia kuzaliwa.
Due to cerebral palsy.
Kwa sababu ya ugonjwa wa cerebral palsy.
And she was using this walking aids.
Na alikuwa akitembea kutumia hiki
But
kitu.
now the baby has been healed.
Lakini sasa mtoto
The
ameponywa.
palsy is healed.
Hiyo palsy imeponywa.
The baby's legs are strong.
Na hiyo miguu yake ya mtoto imetiwa nguvu.
The baby can now walk.
Na mtoto sasa anaweza kutembea.
try to strengthen the legs. They were trying
walikuwa wanajaribu
to use this. Come baby, come to
tumia
the
hii
over here,
upande huu
over here.
upande huu
Na mnipatie soda.
and give me soda.
How precious.
Ya thamani kiasi gani.
This baby was crippled.
Huyu mtoto alikuwa kiwete.
Do you know this? Unajua hii?
Unajua hii? What is this?
So this baby was crippled.
Kwa hivyo huyu mtoto alikuwa
Huyu
kiwete.
mtoto wako?
Mtoto wangu
Yes, she is my daughter.
Nini ilitendeka?
What happened?
alikuwa katika ugonjwa unaitwa cerebral palsy.
Cerebral palsy.
She was sick of a sickness called cerebral palsy.
Kutoka kuzaliwa mpaka 3 years.
Since birth up to 3 years.
Kutoka kuzaliwa mpaka 3 years.
Since birth up to 3 years.
Na amepatikana na slight damage brain.
The slight brain damage.
Tunaitishwa 150,000 aenda akachunguzwe kichwa hiyo damage brain na kupelekwa
150,000 shillings was needed for the brain scan and abroad, right?
Ilihitajika shilingi 150,000 afanyiwe uchunguzi.
What happened to the baby here?
Nini kilimtendekea mtoto hapa?
Ulijuaje ametembea? How did you know?
Ulijuaje ametembea?
Pastor Jen mwenye alitulipia fare ya kukuja hapa anaitwa Pastor Jen. Ni wa hapa Eldoret kwa church yenu. Ndio alituma fare Nairobi tukuje.
Okay.
Ndio amekuja akamwambia baby kama akaamka na akamfuata na akopa.
No, explain to me. These things were used for what?
Hivi vitu vilikuwa vinatumika kufanya nini?
Na kutengeneza miguu aweze kutembea.
So you these legs were, oh yes, I saw these legs, yes. Yes. Yes, I saw these legs in the dream.
Niliona hii miguu katika ndoto.
Ulitoaje hizi vitu? How did you remove this? I always want to know.
Kila wakati nataka
That moment when the Lord struck.
huo wakati ambapo Bwana alimguza.
How did you know that it's time to remove? Ulijuaje ni wakati wa kutoa?
Huwa anatoa na kumrudisha. Wakati Pastor Jenny amekuja akamwambia kuja, alipomfuata akiwa ametembea nazo na atembeaji na hizi vitu, nikamtoa na akawa.
Okay, no, I don't want to confuse this. Atembeange bila hizi.
Anamshikilia anatembea nazo.
Oh, hii akivaa anashikiliwa. Oh, so even with this, she has to be supported.
Hata akitumia hizi inabidi asaidiwe.
The Lord has done a very big miracle
Bwana
here.
amefanya muujiza mkubwa sana hapa.
She's saying
Anasema
that these, can I have this? That these things here,
ya kwamba hivi vitu hapa,
even with them,
hata akiwa navyo,
she has to be supported.
ilibidi asaidiwe, ashikiliwe.
Because the legs were very weak like this.
Kwa sababu miguu ilikuwa dhaifu tu.
And they were saying
na walikuwa wanasema
that over time when they use this, it will strengthen the legs.
ya kwamba
For
kwa fulani
training, for
akitumia
all that.
tia nguvu.
But they wanted to go scan for the brain.
Lakini
Hizo, si ndio? Wakati baada amevaa. Alafu mlijuaje ni wakati wa kutoa hii?
how did you know this?
Somebody let's shout to the Lord.
Mtu tupazie Bwana sauti. Hallelujah.
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 This is mighty.
Hii ni kubwa.
This is very mighty.
Hii ni kubwa sana.
Baby, come
Mtoto njoo
in front of television.
mbele ya runinga.
Come to me.
Njoo kwangu, njoo kwangu.
Oh, this is very powerful.
Hii ni ya nguvu
Come,
sana.
baby, come.
Njoo mtoto, njoo mtoto.
Come. Hey.
Njoo.
You are looking at the guests.
Unaangalia wageni.
But walk with me on this side.
Lakini tembea pamoja nami upande huu.
Because, you know, when the Lord shows me this,
Wakati Bwana ananionyesha hii
in the dreams,
katika ndoto,
it is also overwhelming.
pia inashangaza.
Because he showed this one, he showed this one.
Sasa unakuonyesha hii na kuonyesha huyu.
Let us continue, baby.
Wacha tuendelee mtoto.
Fanta is sweet,
Fanta ni tamu
and the miracles are sweet.
na miujiza ni tamu.
Hallelujah.
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 This is it. Now,
Ndio hii sasa.
hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
What the Lord has done
kile ambacho Bwana ametenda.
I always tell the Lord
Kila wakati namshukuru Bwana
that only one miracle like this is enough for the whole meeting.
ya kwamba muujiza mmoja kama huu
Kennedy Otieno. I am a physician and currently a registrar at Moi and Teaching Referral Hospital, where we are. I am based and stationed at Nyayo Ward. We are here to analyze a case of cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is defined as a permanent neuronal damage. This is damage that involves the entire brain and the central nervous system. And the catch of this definition is that it is a permanent situation, meaning that once cerebral palsy, always cerebral palsy. There is no way to go around it. Cerebral palsy occurs as a result of injuries that occur during or around the time of birth. These injuries may involve bleeding within the brain space or things that may cause lack or insufficient oxygen supply to the brain. In the long run, the brain is shattered and hit, and part of the brain, in layman's language, is defined as dead. As the baby continues to grow, we start to see the manifestations of this injury. For example, depending with the part of the brain that has been hit, we may have blindness, deafness, inability to grow, failure to thrive, loss of bladder and bowel control, intellectuality difficulties, movement inabilities, and anything can occur. We have people who present with epilepsies and seizures. We have people who are stunted. They can never grow. So you get somebody who is 20-year-old, but they have the body size of a 3 or 4-year-old child. That is how bad cerebral palsy is. A lot of them are crippled and lame, confined to wheelchairs, confined to braces, confined to support systems for their muscles, because they cannot obtain muscle or bone development as a result of the injury to the brain. So primarily, cerebral palsy as being permanent means there is permanent damage to your brain. Remember that your brain is what informs the entire body to grow, how you eat, how you walk, how you see, how you hear. All these things are controlled from the brain. And once the brain has been affected adversely, like it is done, it occurs during cerebral palsy, then it follows that you are also not able to benefit from these services that we obtain from the brain. So your body will be hampered, your growth will be hampered, the intellectuality of the child is hampered, their intelligence is hampered, their learning ability is hampered, and everything about them is hampered. Meaning that this child will remain dependent entirely. They will need somebody to feed them all their life. They will need somebody to clothe them, to clean them up all their life. They will need somebody even to turn them over on the bed when they are sleeping. They will need somebody to do virtually everything for them. This is troubling for their mothers and their entire families in the long run. And remember, on top of how bad it is, it has also been discovered that the lifespan of these people who have cerebral palsies are markedly reduced. It is very difficult to get people with cerebral palsies, especially the bad types, that have lived beyond their 25th birthday. A lot of them die so early because they are prone to a lot of infections, pneumonia, and many other GI, gastrointestinal disturbances. So cerebral palsy as a disease is a very bad situation. Even to the doctors, we know that it is very challenging to deal with patients who have cerebral palsy. Their immunity itself is compromised. Their body structures is not the orthodox one, so even their treatment when they have infection and many other things is challenging. But I want us to examine the case of one baby, Blessing. Blessings Wanjiru is a child who was born with cerebral palsy, and the way she uses braces in order to stand because her muscles and her bones can never develop such that they are able to bear her weight. We can look at her and see how the body size versus her age at that time, we are able to see that this baby is confined to this kind of bracket which has to help her to stand. She is not able to stand on her own. She is not able to speak. She is not able to do a lot of things as a normal baby should. And that is trouble for her, trouble for her parents, trouble for her entire family. The reason why we see baby Blessings unable to stand by herself, unable to support herself, and needing external help in order even to stand is because of the brain injury that she suffered, bringing about cerebral palsy. So this is for her supposed to be a permanent condition. She is meant to be this way until the end because there is no medical intervention that is known to deal with cerebral palsy. There is no operation that can be done. There is no medicine that can be given. There is no injection that can be administered to deal with cerebral palsy in order to reverse the changes. Remember, we mentioned it is permanent. Now, coming right now to look at the images of this baby, I am stunned, and I can assure you that the entire medical fraternity is stunned to see this same baby who was permanently confined to the braces and the supportive structures, being able now to jump, being able to run, to walk and to sing, able to do things that normally somebody who has cerebral palsy will never be able to achieve them. So, my simple explanation to this situation will be this, that except she received a new brain, except a very, very sophisticated operation was done to her to give her a new brain and to restructure her in that to bring new strength to her muscles, new strength to her bones, new strength to every aspect of her existence. It is only when that is done that we can have this kind of manifestation. But I can assure you that as far as medicine is concerned, such has not been discovered.